The year is 2001. Luigi looks like this. Solid Snake looks like this. Zelda looks like this, as far as we know. And while the kiddies were playing at the kiddie pool, meanwhile over at Microsoft, combat was evolving.
Halo changed everything.
Halo was such a bold, innovative title.
That's Halo, right? Good games is a very broad qualifier, and they are not at all made equal. You have games that most people will enjoy, there are games that a lot of people love and cherish, and then all the way at the top are games that every single person is expected to play. Games in this tier generally include things like Final Fantasy VII, BioShock, Mario 64, MGS3, Ocarina of Time, Portal 2, San Andreas, and Halo. I guess you could say that it's, tied for leader. Trying to break into the video game console market is a foolhardy endeavor because at this time it was still very much a duopoly, especially now that Sega was about to give up. Yeah, Xbox might have twice as much RAM and a way faster processor than the GameCube and PS2, but nobody actually knows what any of that stuff means, so why would anyone buy this when you could have the Mario and Zelda console or the GTA and Metal Gear console? The answer was Halo. And spoiler alert, that turned out to be a very good answer. This game is the reason Xbox succeeded back then, and to some extent, it's still the reason they succeed. If Halo wasn't a thing, Xbox would not have made it this far, and Nintendo would have sold Rare to PlayStation instead. I wonder how that would have worked. Now, you have to understand that my nostalgic connection to Halo is very limited. Like I said before, these super violent FPS games were a no-go in my household, and I was stuck playing Mario, Pikmin, and Zelda. Now, depending on who you ask, these might well be the better games, but back then, everyone was talking about Halo and GTA. They were not talking about Pikmin. Bastards. I think I blitzed through the campaign with my brother once on the original Xbox on Legendary difficulty, and let me tell you, that was a real stress test of our brotherly dynamic. This was about a decade after it came out when I started collecting games. I bought an Xbox off of my friend with these fake-ass third-party controllers that were barely functional. Today, I finally got it on PC and went through the campaign to give it a proper, informed opinion. This was very long overdue. Halo was released in 2001, making it 21 years old this year. Wait, jeez, it's that old? How old am I? To say that Halo was ahead of its time when it came out would be a massive understatement. Halo was so far ahead of its time that it feels like it came out last Tuesday. I've played a lot of games that were considered revolutionary for their time, but it's very rare that they were revolutionary enough to still be good by today's standards. Go and bust out your brother's N64 and try to play GoldenEye. It feels like trying to wrangle a hot dog away from the world's most uncooperative cat after it got a caffeine patch stuck to its back. Halo, on the other hand, feels completely modern to the point that it's just as functional as most of the current FPS landscape. The big thing is the controls. I played this on PC, so I had the option of a mouse and keyboard, but it's how it handled the dual analog stick controls that made it so revolutionary, and after trying it out, it's crazy how well it still holds up. Although Halo is often attributed as the inventor of the dual thumbstick FPS control setup, this technically wasn't the first game to do it. But because of things like bullet magnetism and some really great aim assist where the cursor movement actually slows down when you drag over an enemy so you don't accidentally move off of it, and aiming acceleration, it managed to do it exceptionally well to the point that it honestly feels better than even most console-based shooters today. It's a really great way to mitigate unintentional human error without literally just taking over control entirely and gluing your gun to the enemy. You still feel like you're in control. I'll still take the mouse, but this is a legitimate option. Combat is far more open-ended and dynamic than even a lot of games today. I remember I chucked a grenade across this hallway trying to kill this guy behind a pillar, and I accidentally ended up launching a plasma rifle all the way over to my side of the hallway. This type of dynamic stuff is what makes Halo stand out. There's a degree of chaos and unpredictability to its combat that is rare even today. Mounted guns, vehicles, you can park a Warthog in a smart place, get out of the driver's seat and get on the turret and shoot them indefinitely. Enemies are diverse in strengths and weaknesses. You got these big bastards covered in body armor and you might be thinking, clearly I had to blow him up. But it turns out the best way to kill these guys is to bait them into charging into you and shooting them once in the back with a magnum. The game is constantly prodding you to question what does and doesn't work. Halo's combat puzzle is a very articulate and enlightening conversation where by the end of it, you'll become fluent in its language, just like Doom 8 years earlier. You could probably hand this game off to a friend and they wouldn't play exactly the same way you do, and it keeps introducing new ideas and enemies and weapons right up until the final moments of the game, and right when you think they ran out of stuff, they bust out the Banshee. Now this is Halo. You can only carry 2 guns at a time, which I hated when I first played it, but it's now one of those things that actually makes the game unique. There's a greater degree of strategy involved when you can't just carry every single gun in existence at one time and have to weigh your options on the fly. You can't sprint in this game, which means that battles are often decided much more by positioning, precision, and timing rather than speed. Previous games in the historical FPS canon will encourage you to be excessively conservative with ammo to the point where if you miss even a few shots, you could become a defenseless baby. Halo, even on the highest difficulty, is much more generous with ammo, where every enemy you kill drops a gun that usually has a lot of ammo in it. You might be in a stressful situation and think, shit, I'm running out of ammo, except the hallway you just shot up is now basically an armory because of all the dropped weapons and grenades. You can keep running back in there to restock and come back out with a big surprise, by which I mean the Needler, the best weapon. Other shooters can also be categorized much more easily as movement shooters and cover shooters, but Halo often wants you to change tactics, like how the Flood show up and now you're playing Doom. The game's design being this dynamic means that it doesn't stagnate after 5 minutes. It is worth noting that I played this on Legendary, which is the fuck you idiot difficulty. It's the hardest difficulty because I hate life and myself, and I'm also better than you. Halo is one of the very few games that actually specifies which difficulty is the real one, heroic, but that wasn't good enough for me. The key to the good kind of difficulty is to make it feel organic, where failure is actually an effective teacher and not just a gorilla that slams a boulder over your dick because you threw the grenade at a slightly wrong angle. Halo is usually great at this, cause when you die, it's usually because the AI outflanked you and outsmarted you. Enemies will hide behind cover for 3 hours if they think it's necessary, so you go, what if I throw a grenade to draw them out? Like I said before, it's a conversation. Something that never fails to weasel fuck an otherwise great video game is pacing issues. That feeling that you're pushing really hard and getting absolutely nowhere because of a small mistake, where 10 minutes of progress can be deleted in an instant and you had to push through all this nonsense just to get back to the part that's actually difficult. And this is one of the greatest things about Halo, the checkpoint system. It's just generous enough to make you feel like you're actually accomplishing something without being so oversaturated that it trivializes your achievements. There were so many moments where I thought the game was going to put me back to like 3 years ago, and instead it just puts me back like a week. This feeling that you're actually getting somewhere makes you not want to quit. I do gotta admit though, the Warthog controls are ass, and that's not a compliment. Then there's the presentation. The massive sprawling worlds are a sight to behold even today, and considering similarly big games before then ran at 2 FPS, this was a pretty big deal. If I played this back when it came out, it would have blown my penis off to the moon. The most graphically impressive game I played at that time was probably Banjo-Tooie on the N64, so looking at this game, even if we're talking OG Xbox, this was awesome. The gap between the 5th and 6th gen really was phenomenal. It is worth noting that this is the Master Chief Collection version, meaning that it contains remastered graphics with fully reworked models, textures, and lighting. These improvements are wicked, but what's great is that you can swap between the old and new graphics on the fly just by tapping a button. If only they had this option with Conquer Live and Reloaded. I preferred to play with the old graphics just for the sake of authenticity, but it's stunning how nice the new graphics look as well. Granted, the humans look a little wonky because their animations are largely unchanged, kinda like the GTA remaster, although less severe. Graphically, there are games that probably looked better back then, but what really carries this game over the finish line is the music. I don't even have to explain it to you, I mean, listen to it. Oh, whoops, sorry, this isn't music, that's just me punching a grunt. Okay, here we go. There's a very real variety to the music. You got slower, atmospheric stuff when you're sniping grunts off of the gun emplacements. You got upbeat, dramatic, orchestral chanting in heavy combat situations. You even got some creepy shit for when you're fighting the Flood. I think for me though, my favorite song is the one that goes boom boom bunk boom boom ba-dum boom bunk bunk boom boom ba-dum boom 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 bunk boom boom ba-dum boom 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 bunk boom boom ba-dum boom. If you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. Even though the soundtrack is phenomenal, it also knows when to shut its ass up and let you just soak in the environmental noises. Then you have the story, which is probably the weaker part of the game, but also the part of the game that isn't quite as important as the other parts. When designing Master Chiefman, aka Spartan 117, aka John 117, aka John, aka the green guy that isn't Zelda, there wasn't a lot of thought put into who he is as a person, which has often been criticized in the context of modern sensibilities. But the strength of that is that he's far more open to interpretation and personal projection. Again, think Doom. Even though the stakes are real, there's a very clear comical undercurrent that peeks its head over the horizon every once in a while. The Covenant all have funny banter and expressive animations. You get one with a sticky grenade and they start freaking out and running around like lunatics. You meet up with a gay robot dude who laughs like an evil rich woman, and then Cortana's all like, "You like him, don't you? You're cheating on me." And Master Chief's like, "Yeah, I was gay the whole time." And it was like, okay, that's not exactly what happens. I gotta be honest, the story is something that didn't really blow me away. It's very much a gameplay-focused game, but there are plot twists and stakes, and there's even space horror elements in there. Honestly, if you really want to appreciate the story, I strongly recommend this video, Halo Recap Evolved, by this guy, Video Game Donkey. He goes super in-depth, he points out all kinds of crazy little details I didn't even notice the first time. It's probably one of the best Halo videos you can find on YouTube, so yeah, definitely watch that. Otherwise, Halo is one of the few titles that was good enough back then to actually still be good 20 years later. It's a piece of history that somehow feels remarkably modern in many respects. It aged like ice wine from Icelandic ice caves, and it's such a towering achievement for video games that in 10 years, they'll probably make another Halo collection just to put this game into it again. Also, apparently it has multiplayer. It's pretty fun, I guess.